Hi, I'm Dan Hegstead. Welcome to my vlog and podcast, Next Steps, Tools for Transforming from Coping to Thriving. It's based on my book of the same title, and it is obviously a paperback. It is a Kindle e-reader, and it is an audiobook, all on Amazon. And the link to Amazon is on my website, danhegstad.com. It's Hegstad. And if you'd like to book me as a speaker, you could do that. I'd like that too. That's on my website also. So today I'm going to talk about why. Why? And, you know, if you want to upset somebody, ask them why. Because they frequently don't want to be challenged or they haven't thought about it. So why is that? Now, a couple things first. I think if somebody asks you why something, you should be able to explain it. And if you can't, you need to think about that. And if you can't defend your position, depending on what the question, how deep it gets, you need to consider changing your opinion. You need to figure out why you do things. It's absolutely critical to moving from coping to thriving. Now, you don't have to know why everything, but if you do want to know why, you can figure it out, and you should be able to explain why you act the way you do, why you think the way you do, within limits. Now, I was speaking to some folks at a retreat a couple years ago, a lot of 12-step people, and they really took issue with me on this. And I get it, and they're not wrong. The question of why you are an alcoholic, for example, is kind of where I think they were coming from. And there probably just isn't an answer to it. And that's quite legitimate. I think there are some whys that, it doesn't matter whether you know or not. It's just the way it is. So that's a really big factor in this, is you just don't have to know everything, but it's good to know a lot, and it's good to know your motivation. And you should have thought that through. It's nice if you can think that through and really understand that. I learned a big lesson years ago when I was looking for some kind of an Eastern philosophy, and I took a karate class. And at the first class, we were being taught what to do, and you're supposed to step out and punch with your right hand, and you twist your wrist or arm at the end. There's this kind of a twisting motion coming out and turning. And I asked, why? And I'll never forget the look on the instructor's face. Why? I don't know. He had no idea. He'd never asked the question. He doesn't know why. Or you just don't ask instructors question. I don't know what his thinking was, but he couldn't explain it, or he wouldn't. And I went to one more class and I said, that's it. If you can't explain why or won't, I'm not part of your class. Fortunately, right after that, I was exposed to Tai Chi. I went to the first class and I was just, this is it. This is my thing. And my instructors were very open to answering questions and the whys of things. And as I became an instructor, I absolutely committed to every student at every class, you can ask me anything, and I will answer your questions thoroughly as I can, as honestly as I can, and if I don't know, I will find the answer. Because if you don't know why you do something, you're not going to do it. You have to know why. What's your motivation? What are you getting into? And with Tai Chi, there's it gets as deep as you want. But why does it move this way and not that way, for example? And that can lead to some pretty deep discussions. I think it's terrific. So I brought that to every class. Go ahead, ask me any question and the why of anything, and I will answer that to the best of my ability. I think that's pretty important. I also learned, the way I heard this, it comes from Japanese business philosophy, of asking 5 whys. If there's a problem, ask why, but then you ask why that is, and you dig down 5 levels, and you maybe have the correct answer. or the root cause. Root cause analysis is what it's called. I call it the illusion of the veneer. And the reason I bring it up here is because we do it all the time. When we're talking about the brain, the base brain, the reptilian brain, looks at things it wants, insists on simple answers because it wants just to get through. It doesn't care what's real. It just wants to deal with what it sees. And that is just frequently wrong. It's just wrong. And the example I use when I do a presentation is I show a satellite photograph of a park in the middle of my town here. And if you'd say, okay, what does the earth look like? What is it made out of? You look at it, it's grass. Obviously. Well, and you know that you go to that park and you dig down 3 inches and it's not grass anymore. And that's exactly the way our brain works unless we engage our higher brain and intervene and are willing to look deeper into the whys of things. It gets a lot more complicated, but you get real answers, and that's pretty important. Example of the 5 whys, you can look this up online. One of the best I found was they're talking about the Jefferson Memorial in Washington. It's made of concrete, I guess, and it's deteriorating faster than memorials and monuments nearby. Well, why is that? There's an airport nearby, and I guess the jet exhaust causes some acid rain and so forth. Well, but it's not just that. No, there's more to it. So they asked, why is that? Well, they have to wash it every 2 weeks, pressure wash it with some pretty heavy chemicals because of the pigeons. Pigeon droppings are pretty nasty when it comes to concrete. Well, why are there so many pigeons? You could capture the pigeons or keep them away. Well, why are there so many pigeons there? There are pigeons because there are spiders. Well, why are there so many spiders here? Well, there are spiders because there's bugs, what they call midges. They come out of they live for just a few hours and then die, but they're attracted to the lights of the Jefferson Memorial. So what do? You change the schedule of the lights. That changes the bugs, which doesn't attract the spiders, so there's no spiders that don't attract the pigeons, no pigeon droppings, you don't have to clean it as often. The illusion of the veneer. And you just need to keep that in mind because so many times that's what we are presented with in the news and in conversation is, here's the problem, what's the solution? Homelessness, for example. I've been doing some video projects for a group working on homelessness. And what I ran into was, what's the solution to homelessness? We'll give them a place to stay. And one of the experts said the solution to homelessness is not providing housing. It is totally counterintuitive because those of us that are housed and don't have to deal with the problem haven't looked into it. It's a lot more complicated. We're talking training, we're talking mental health issues, we're talking transportation, we're talking daycare, we're talking health care. Wages, and all that goes into homelessness. You can't solve one problem. The people at our Economic Development Authority in my town here, I was asking them about the unemployment. Well, how can we have, even if it's minimal unemployment, I could go get 100 jobs this afternoon. Why is there unemployment? And their answer was, well, you can't solve one problem. You can't just solve unemployment. You have to solve housing and daycare. And you can't just do one, you have to do all 3. It's much more complicated than you might think. And it's just easier for our brains to just check out and say, I'm not going to deal with it. Well, you can't do that if you're a responsible adult, and I hope you are. So, the illusion of the veneer. Think about that as you go through your life, is that here's the problem, and you think you understand the problem by just looking at it. No, you dig down 2 inches and you get beyond the grass into the dirt. And then you find out what the problem is, and then you can make strides toward solving it or changing it. Think of that. I ask you, why do you do what you do? Why do you act that way? What are the rules you live by? And in the book, I insist that you put pen to paper, a real pen on real paper, and write things down. There's something magic about actually putting ink on paper, not just typing it or thinking about it, pen to paper. So what are the rules you live by? And you don't just sit down and do it. You think about it, and over the course of maybe the rest of your life, you think about why you do what you do. Very simply, my wife says you shouldn't eat soup in the summer. It's just a thing, and I guess that's a thing for people. I like soup. I don't care what season it is. It's not a rule I live by. Now, she will let me eat soup in the summer. It's okay. Can you have pie for breakfast? Sometimes I do. Well, it's just not done. We were joking today about lefse. Now, if you're not Scandinavian, you might not know what lefse is, but you need to look it up. Potato-based kind of flatbread kind of stuff. And traditionally, you put butter on it, and then you sprinkle some sugar, and you roll it up and eat it, and it's delicious, and we eat it at holiday times. Lefse, look it up. Consult the great Google. We were talking about it today. Some people put brown sugar on it. Oh, no. When I was a young adult, I think at Christmas time, I put some jelly on it. And people were not happy. And I thought it was a joke at first. But no, there were some relatives who was like, you just don't do that. You don't put jelly on lefse. And they weren't joking. It's like, really? Who cares? You have to ask, where does that come from, and what difference does it make? How you butter your bread. But it's rules. It truly is rules, and we get in those rules in our heads, and we don't know where they came from or why we are following them. So that's why it's so important that you realize the rules you live by, and then decide, does that make sense? You get to decide now. The people that made the rules you're living by are probably long gone. And, what are the consequences if you break the rule? And frequently it's just nothing. It doesn't make any difference. And, you get to change. When I first started learning Tai Chi, computers were new, and there were chat rooms, I think they were called, online. This was before Google. It was before Netscape or anything. But you'd be in these chat rooms, and these people would be discussing Tai Chi and get in passionate fights about what was accurate. Well, I learned from so-and-so, and he learned from so-and-so, and he learned. So here's his lineage from China, from the ancient. And the other guy, well, I learned from this guy, and he learned from, here's his lineage of learning from China. And they're fighting about it. And it's like, people, it's okay. My feeling is that if you truly understand Tai Chi and the why things are the way they are and why you were taught this, if you truly understand it and you see a reason to change, you get to do that. Not only do you get to, you must. It's how things grow. And the ancients would be so happy for you because, they know these things have to grow and change. If you're not growing and changing as a student, you're wasting your time. And the ancients, the masters understand this, as their students must grow beyond what they were taught, and learn more. We learn more, and then we teach differently. When you know better, you do better, and you teach better. So you don't fight over what the ancients said or thought. That's not the way to do it. We need to grow and change. You need to ask the why. You need to ask the why, and you need to answer it, unless it doesn't matter. And you get to decide that too. Does it really matter? So what motivates you? This gets back to that base brain and higher brain and that too. There's no right or wrong answer here. It's not, but you need to think about it. It goes, I saw a guy on TV. They were talking about tomatoes. There's these beautiful tomatoes and people buy them and that, but the people complain that the flavor isn't there. And there was a tomato farmer who said, I don't get paid for flavor. And he's holding up this just gorgeous model of a tomato. But I don't get paid for flavor. Well, that, folks, just exemplifies everything that is wrong about humans. That is one of the stupidest things. I mean, you don't buy a tomato to look at it. You buy it to eat it. Who cares what it looks like? It has to taste good. But that's not the way we operate. That's that base brain saying, if it's pretty, I like it. And we go beyond that now because we've moved from coping to thriving. The Ford Mustang is one of the best-selling cars of all times. Millions. They've sold millions of them. And it started in the early 60s. Ford actually wanted to build a competitor to Chevy's Corvair. Check that out. Corvair was a pretty cool car. But it ended up not being that. But they built the Mustang, which is iconic. But they didn't start with a clean sheet of paper. They started with the 1963 Ford Falcon. Essentially, the 64 Mustang was a 63 Falcon with a different body on it. It's the veneer. Now, it changed over the years too. But listen, the 63 Falcon sold about 300,000 cars. They put a different body on it. The Mustang is just a gorgeous, iconic body style. In 18 months, they sold 1 million of them. That's the difference. That's the veneer. Now, the veneer matters a lot when you're buying a car, as long as it's a good car. And it obviously, engineering-wise, they changed the underneath of it later. But it started out being basically a Falcon with a different body on it. But that's what marketing is. That's how our brains work. We want the pretty one. There's nothing wrong with that as long as you know it. Okay? Was the Mustang a better car than the Falcon? Absolutely not. Did it look cool? Yeah, a pretty cool car. The illusion of the veneer. And I want you to ask why. Be aware of how your brain works, the illusion of the veneer, how we take in things, and we need to think things through. Ask yourself why you do things, and then you get to decide, do I want to follow those rules or not? You get to ask yourself, can I find an ugly tomato that tastes good? Am I going to be okay with that? If you can, you've moved from coping to thriving. All right. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Visit my website to buy the book or get your link to Amazon to buy it. And get the audio book. I think that's the best version of it, but some people like a paper book, and you get to do that. It's all on my website, danhegstead.com. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Next Steps, Tools for Transforming from Coping to Thriving.